This is Miss Humbert here. Today we're going to be doing the Unit 3 Quiz 1 review. So we're going to be talking over the review to get you ready for that quiz. So first of all, let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 1. So you're given the polynomial 3x to the 5th plus 2x to the 4th minus 7x cubed minus 9x squared plus 2x minus 1. So the first thing it asks us is how many terms are there in the polynomial. That's just simply counting the number of things that are separated by pluses and minuses. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are 6 terms. Next thing you want to do is identify the coefficients. Well, the coefficients are going to be the numbers multiplied outside of everything with an x. So each of these represent a coefficient. So we have 3, 2, -7, and -9, and 2 again, okay? What is the leading coefficient of the polynomial? Well, the leading coefficient, you're going to take a look at the term with the highest exponent, which is x to the 5th. And then you're going to look at the coefficient of that term, which is 3. So the leading coefficient is 3. What is the constant of the polynomial? The constant is the thing that is just a number. So that's going to be this -1 over here. So the constant's going to be -1. Notice that I'm taking the signs with when I do these problems. What is the degree of the polynomial? The degree of the polynomial is the largest exponent. Well, the largest exponent is 5, so it's a 5th degree polynomial. Taking a look at number 6, what is the degree of the 4th term? So we need to count 1, 2, 3, 4. So -9x squared is the 4th term. Now the degree of that term is going to be the exponent. So this is a 2nd degree polynomial. All right, let's take a look at multiplying these monomials. So when you take and you multiply 7x to the 5th times x squared, you're going to add the exponents. You're going to take x to the 5th times x squared, and that's going to be x to the 7th, which is 7. Taking a look at number 8, okay, so this is your final answer for number 7. For number 8, you're going to multiply the big numbers. So you're going to multiply the coefficients. 5 times 3 is 15. X to the 1st times x to the 4th is x to the 5th. And then you're going to have y, or y to the 1st. So this right here is your final answer because the x and the y's cannot be combined down any further. So taking a look at number 9, we're taking a power to a power. So because this entire thing is being raised to the 2nd power, that means we need to multiply our exponents. Now, a lot of students forget that that 2 also has an exponent of 1 on it. So you need to multiply that exponent with each of the exponents on the inside. So for the first one, 1 times 2 is 2, so that's going to be 2. X to the 3 times 2 is 6, and y to the 2 times 2 is going to be 4. So then we need to simplify this out just one step further. We're going to take 2 to the 2nd power, which is the same as 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, and then you get x to the 6th, y to the 4th. So that's your final answer for number 9. Okay, taking a look at number 10, we want to divide that out. Well, when you divide things of like bases, you're going to subtract the exponents. So 7 minus 2 is going to give me 5. So that gives me x to the 5th for number 10. Now, taking a look at number 11. For number 11, the first thing I want to do is reduce that fraction. So I'm going to take 10 and 8, and I'm going to divide them both by 2. Well, 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So now that fraction is completely reduced. Next, I'm going to look at x squared divided by x to the 5th. Well, when you subtract those out, you get x to the 3rd. Now, I need to put that x to the 3rd where my larger amount of x's lie. And that's going to be on the bottom. Since my larger amount of x's is on the bottom, x to the 3rd is going to be on the bottom. Then we have y to the 4th divided by y squared. Subtract those out, and then you get y squared up top. So 5y squared divided by 4x to the 3rd. Now, taking a look at number 12, whenever you have a negative exponent, you need to flip where it's located. So this x to the -2 is negative on top, so it needs to come down to the bottom. y to the negative 2 is negative on the bottom, so it needs to come back up to the top. So I have 4, and then I have my y squared that was originally on the top. That's going to stay there, but I also need to bring my y squared, this is y cubed that was originally there. That's too small for me to see. Okay, so I'm going to have y cubed, and then I'm bringing that y squared up, so they're both lying on top. Then on the bottom, 3, and then x to the 4th is going to stay on the bottom. Now remember, I flipped an x squared down to the bottom, so I'm going to write that there. And then I have z. Well, now I can take these y's and I can multiply them together. So when I take y to the 3rd times y squared, I need to add those exponents, and that's going to give me y to the 5th. That 3 is going to stay there on the bottom. X to the 4th times x squared, you're going to add those exponents and you get x to the 6th, and then you have z. So that right there is your final answer for number 12. Let's take a look at number 13. We see that that x is being multiplied on the outside. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take that x and multiply it in. Now remember that that's x to the 1st power. So when we multiply that in, we need to add the exponents. So x to the 1st power times x squared, you add those exponents and you get x to the 3rd. Then I'm going to keep that 3 there. X to the 1st times x to the 1st is going to give me x squared. Negative 2 times x is going to give me negative 2x. So this right here is your final answer for number 13. Then, taking a look at number 14, we're going to go ahead and distribute that in. So negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. Negative 3 times 5 is going to be 15. Again, you're multiplying the big numbers or the coefficients and adding the exponents. So then we're going to have x squared times x to the 1st. Well, when you multiply those together, you get x cubed. Then we're going to take negative 3 times negative 3, and that's going to be a positive 9. And then I'm going to take my x squared with it. So that last term is 9x squared. So that's your final answer for number 14. Now let's take a look at number 15. So we're only going to distribute each of those into the parenthesis they're directly following. So that 3x is going to be multiplied in there, and that 2x is going to be multiplied there. Now remember, when there's no exponent, the exponent is 1, not 0. So 3x to the 1st times x to the 1st is going to be 3x squared. So then I'm going to take 3 and I'm going to multiply it by a negative 4, which is a negative 12, and then I am going to take that x along with it. Then I have 2x to the 1st times x to the 1st. That's going to give me 2x squared. And then I'm going to take 2x times 3, and that's going to give me 6x. Okay? So 3x squared plus 2x squared is going to be 5x squared. Negative 12x plus 6x, that's going to end up being a negative 6x. So my final answer for number 15 is going to be 5x squared minus 6x. Now we're going to take that 3x and we're only going to distribute into that parenthesis, and that negative 4x is going to be distributed into the second parenthesis. So I'm going to write it down here so I have a little bit more space. Okay, so let's take a look at number 13. So it's not letting me click. Let me know. Okay, so we're going to have 3x squared plus 3 times, let me just bring that down a little bit so we can see that. That was kind of crazy. So we're going to have 3x to the 1st times x squared is x cubed. 3 times 7 is going to be 21, and then you're going to have x times x, which is x squared. Negative 4 times that 3 is going to be negative 12, and then you're going to carry the x with it. Now we're going to take that negative 4x and distribute it in. So negative 4x times x squared, when you add those exponents, you're going to get x to the 3rd. Negative 4x plus 2x is going to be negative 8. And then we're going to get x squared when you add those exponents. And negative 4 times 5 is going to be negative 20, and then x. So now I can go ahead and add like terms. So 3x cubed minus 4x cubed is x cubed. 21x squared minus 8x squared is going to be 13x squared. Notice when I'm adding like terms, I'm not adding the exponents. And then negative 12x minus 20x, when you add two negative numbers, it gets more negative. So you get negative 32x. So that right there is your final answer, and that's the conclusion of the quiz review video. Thanks for listening.